Alright, welcome to Module 1, Smart Wholesaling for the New Rich. I am your fearless leader, Justin Wilmot. And before we get into the content and the how-tos, we need to talk about the mindset of a 10-hour wholesaler and more or less why I created this and a new way for you to see the world. This is the way that I and successful students have created a lifestyle that's different from your traditional or typical ideology of from the industrial age. Now, I call this the new social era. And in the new rich, we have others work for us. We don't work for ourselves. We don't go into business to create another job just to stay busy. We prevent the work for work mentality, meaning we identify the most specific things that we need to do, and then that's what we do. We don't do quote unquote busy work. We outsource it smartly, intelligently, and we shoot for mini retirements, meaning throughout the year. For example, my wife and I, we go to Central America at least 2 to 3 times, and then throughout the year we pick a couple other places to go. Now, with the way we set up our 10-hour wholesaler systems, we don't need to be anywhere in particular. As long as I have Wi-Fi and my laptop, we're in business. And the money is always coming in no matter what we're doing. So we don't need to shoot for a specific date of retirement. If you can click some buttons and you're 90 years old, you can do this. Now, if you choose not to, of course you can outsource our own tasks and be even back further, put a CEO in your place. But for now, you got to understand that we don't work hard eventually to retire at an older age when life has already passed us by. You know, personally, there's a lot of things that I like to do and see and accomplish with my friends and family, and things to see in the world. And as you know, I'm a surfer, so there's a lot of places I want to go, and I know that most people want to do the same. And we are all here to live our lives to the fullest, and going to work or creating a job as an investor is not serving your purpose. So mini retirements throughout the year is what we do. We are having things as a means to an end, not the focus. We make a ton of money, but with specific reasons in mind. And we have more quality and less cluster. Our systems are in place, and we never have to worry about what's next. We also think big, but ensure a payday come every day. For us, it's cash flow first, then big payday second. That's a very big adjustment from some people, but I'm telling you, this is the absolute least resistance way to live. We do what we want whenever we want, and we always can feel ensure that the money is coming in. We have freedom to pursue our real pure dreams. Whatever it is that you really want to do in life, this system will help you achieve that. Alright, and in this module, you're about to discover the 10-hour wholesaler mindset. We just spoke about it briefly, but we're going to go into more detail in just a bit. And we're going to go over what is co-wholesaling versus wholesaling, or vice versa, I should say. What is wholesaling versus co-wholesaling. We're going to go over smart wholesaling for the new rich. My top seller and sources and where we find them. My top buyer sources and where and how to find them, and setting up your company entity. And a disclaimer, once again, we are not attorneys, so don't take any of this as legal advice. Alright, the 10-hour wholesaler mindset. We have an I can mind frame, and we put blinders on. So whenever we set ourselves up for a new goal, we have an I can mind frame. That means that we know that we are capable of doing it, we believe it, and we just do it. And how do we just do it? Well, we put blinders on, which means we unsubscribe mentally and physically from all other distractions and subscriptions. We concentrate on our one focus. You have committed to wholesaling by purchasing this program, so you need to put in the work, especially in the beginning. See this process through until the end. Once again, unsubscribe mentally and physically from everything else. Have 100% faith in this process and in this system. I and many students are successfully implementing it. When you run into resistance or any type of obstacles, just let that faith of knowing that other people are doing it and that you can too. Whenever you feel confusion or distraction setting in, come back to this module. Get clarity. Remind yourself to just keep it simple. There is what I call nothing else. There's no reason to complicate it. And I remember when I was starting in this business, one of the things that I personally would do, and that I see lots and lots of people that I work with do all the time, is to complicate it. And there's really no reason for it. When you feel confusion, stop, take a breather, and contact support. It will work for you. You just have to have the faith. Now, you also need to know as a 10-hour wholesaler that we have an abundance mentality, and deals are infinite. And when I say infinite, I mean infinite. Through this system, the country is literally your oyster. You are not stuck in the market that you live in, or just the market that you have knowledge in, or just the market that you start in. The country is literally your oyster. Deals come in to every market day in and day out by the boatloads. There are more deals than you could ever imagine. And I'm telling you this because you need to have this mindset, so when something goes wrong, you do not get discouraged. Get rid of it, forget it, make it a learning lesson, and move on to the next relationship and to the next business. Buyers are infinite. Buyers are flooding into the market every single day, both domestic and international cash buyers. There are hundreds of deals and buyers entering the market at all times. There's nothing to fear, nothing to lose when wholesaling houses like this. Now, when we wholesale the smart way, as we're going to go into a little bit later, you're only putting properties under contract that your clients already want and have told you that they want. You're going to get a deposit from them prior to even putting the house under contract. There is truly no risk in doing it this way. It is the smart way to do houses. Get started now. Path to making money quickly. Feel the fear and do it anyway. If you're new to the business, it does not matter. Every step that you need will be in these modules to learn how to wholesale properties and to learn how to co-wholesale properties the 10-hour wholesaler way. For every single step, once again, feel free to reach out. But you have this content here. Go back, rewind whenever you need to for clarity. Now, we spoke about this before in the Kickstart module, but you need to squash preconceived beliefs that you have right now and about what's possible for you. You need to look at this information objectively. Have an open mind. If you have different beliefs as of right now, do yourself a favor and look at everything from here on out objectively. The best way for you to consume and retain it is to look at everything objectively. Everything happens in your mind first, so believe that you can flip these properties nationwide. That seems to be a very hard thing for some people to digest, that they can be a national real estate investor. But I'm telling you, once you get into the business, you'll wonder why you ever thought it would be difficult. It's actually much easier. It makes much more sense than restricting yourself to one particular market. Now, passion. We have to have lots of passion for what we do, because when you have passion, that rubs off on other people, and your relationships will start to pick up on your passion, and it will make people want to work for you. Your excitement on the phone will actually help you concrete these relationships that are necessary. Your integrity is going to need to be solid because you're going to be working on building very important relationships with co-wholesalers, with buyers, and with sellers. So your integrity needs to be tight. You need to visualize your goals throughout this entire process and continual personal growth. There are many books out there, and we're going to give you resources at the end of these modules, but some of the best books out there that you can get started with are Eckhart Tolle, The Power of Now, The E-Myth Revised by Michael Gerber, and of course, Napoleon Hill's Think and Grow Rich. Read right now How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie. This is extremely important above the other ones I just mentioned. Reason being, as a 10-hour wholesaler, your mindset is all about relationships. This entire business is based on relationships. You are not much more than a real estate matchmaker, an advertiser, a marketer. Have you ever seen the TV show The Millionaire Matchmaker? Well, my wife has made me watch it a couple of times before, I'll admit, but I'll tell you right now, it is very similar to what we're doing. We're matching up one love for the other. The love and the need for a seller to sell, and the love and the need for a buyer to obtain a new property so they can reach their goals. And the way we do this is through being a relationship influencer. So How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie is an absolute must. Consider it part of the course. Now, once again, if you've never done a deal before, that's no problem. If you think you're lacking the confidence because you don't have the experience, then fake it till you make it. There are many people out there that have done the same, and that's pretty much an understatement. Here's your chance to be an actor in your own movie. This is how all successful, self-made people started out. There's not one multi-millionaire and billionaire producer that didn't first believe that they were capable of something before they have actually achieved that something. Because it starts in the belief. Goes back to what we were talking about previously. You really, truly do have to believe that you can do it. Because once again, we're showing you the principles and the steps throughout this course. So it's going to start with your belief. Alright, wholesaling fundamentals. What is wholesaling? Well, wholesaling is simple as putting a property under contract from a motivated seller and selling that contract to a cash buyer at a higher price than the contractual agreement. So for example, if you got a property under contract to purchase from a seller for say $60,000, and then you found a cash buyer who wants that for $70,000, and why would he pay you $70,000? Because the after repair value of the property is $100,000. So the $10,000 in the middle is the spread or your profit. Basically, you just find a motivated seller, get the property under contract, find a buyer interested in paying more, and then you either do one of two things. You either assign that contract to your buyer for a fee, which is a simple one-page assignment contract, or you do what's called a simultaneous closing, where you actually buy and sell the property in the same day with the buyer's cash. Very simple process, and we'll get into that later on. The buyer's cash is used to close the transactions. The wholesaler gets paid the spread, the difference between the contract price with the seller and the price with the buyer. The further below market value the price is with the seller, the more profitable it can be. So it's very important when negotiating with motivated sellers to get the best deal that you can. And later, I'm going to show you a couple little tactics to create even bigger spreads in the middle, even once you do have a property under contract. The wholesaler uses no cash or no credit whatsoever. Your value is bringing the seller the cash and the buyer the property. You do not at all need to be a real estate agent or broker or have any license, as you are not representing anybody. Now, of course, you will need to speak to your attorney, as every state has different particular requirements, but I'm telling you right now, wholesaling is done nationwide, and thousands and thousands of deals are done a year. Now, wholesaling fundamentals. 2 methods to close your wholesale deals are, let's go over this more in detail. The simultaneous closing, which is my preferred method when I'm doing bank-owned HUDs. And the reason is, when I'm making over $10,000 on a deal, I don't like my buyer or my seller to see the fee that I'm making. Now, an assignment is the easiest way to get paid. And an assignment looks like this. It's a 1-page contract, and it simply assigns your interest in a property over to your buyer. So visualize this for a moment if you're new to the business. You get a property under contract with a motivated seller. You know the property is worth $100,000. You get it under contract for $60,000. You then market that contract / property, and you find a buyer that wants it for $70,000. Okay, great. Now what? Well, you get a 1-page assignment contract that actually assigns your interest in that contract over to your buyer, which means it literally takes your name off the contract with the sell side. It puts your buyer's name. You take those contracts and you hand them to a closing agency or a closing attorney, and they do the work from there. Now, a lot of people get super confused and nervous at that process. All you need to worry about in the beginning, if you're doing your very first wholesale deal, is to get a property under contract with a motivated seller. Then you need to get a contract with the cash buyer. And if you're going to assign that contract, get that assignment contract signed. We have that provided for you guys in the resources and download section of your members panel. Now, once again, the difference between doing a simultaneous closing and an assignment is, in a simultaneous closing, you're actually going to closing, meaning you're going to close on the property, but you're also going to use your buyer's funds to close on the transaction. Now, this is completely legal in many states, but in some states it may not be. It's what they call a dry closing. Now, if this is the case, you're going to need to get what's called transactional funding, where you're going to borrow the money for a short period of time, and there are many transactional funders out there, which we'll get into later. But you're going to borrow the money for a short period of time, buy the property, and then sell the property back to your buyer. If wholesaling through a simultaneous closing, you are the contractual buyer and seller. 2 transactions take place when doing this, and that is the transaction between you buying the property from the seller and then you selling the property to your buyer, all in the same day. Transaction between the seller and the wholesaler, transaction between the wholesaler and the buyer. Simultaneous closings. The buyer doesn't know how much you make on the deal. Now, this can be very important because you don't always know the mentality of your cash buyer. Believe it or not, there are some people out there that don't like to see a wholesaler make what they believe is too much money, since the buyer, which is typically a guy who's going to fix and flip the property, is the guy who's putting up all the money in his own mind, putting up all the money and taking all the risk to do the transaction. Now, that's really none of their business in particular. What you get the property under contract for does not matter. What matters is what you're able to provide, what value you're able to provide to that buyer. This property that they obviously want is a property that they would never have without you. Now, if you got that property under contract for $5 and it's worth $100,000, guess what? You're going to have a phenomenal payday. But if you got it under contract for $65,000 and it's only worth $70,000 to your cash buyer, then that's what you're going to make, is $5,000 minus closing costs. Now, I prefer to do all of my deals as simultaneous closing. And I'll get more into that in a little bit later, but I'll tell you right now, it's because I like to keep everybody quote unquote greased in all my deals. And the reason for that is more people are involved when we're doing simultaneous closings, and my closing attorney gets paid. Now, in a simultaneous closing, you also stay in the seller position the entire time of the transaction. My title company, actually my title attorney, prefers this method since they can have my buyer sign an acknowledgement form stating that my buyer is fully aware we are using their money to close the transaction. It's called a simultaneous closing disclosure. And in the state of Florida and in many states, as long as they sign off allowing you to use their money to close both sides of the deal, it's completely legal. Now, this is the most expensive closing method to doing deals, but like I said, I prefer to do it because it keeps everything on the straight and narrow. Now, if wholesaling a property through an assignment, we're not selling the house. We're selling the contract, the paper. The paper is the product. Now, the assignment contract is a simple one-page contract, like I said before, that simply assigns your interest in a property over to your buyer for a set fee. Say it's $10,000 like in the example that we've been using. Now, let's get some more clarification on what an assignment contract is going to look like here. So, for example, again, if the property is worth $100,000, ARV, that's called after repair value, your offer for a quick cash deal to the seller may be $70,000. When you make an offer to a motivated seller, you're going to make sure that this sale is contingent upon partner's approval. This is called an escape clause, and it's extremely important to make sure that you have this escape clause in every offer that you're making. Now, when doing your own wholesale deals and working with motivated sellers, you need to be making multiple offers a week. We've been known to do over 100 offers in 1 week, and we do close to that on average. So for that, it is extremely important that you have an escape clause in every one of those offers. We're going to show you how to do bulk offers so you can actually do 50 to 100 offers a week a little bit later on through some really cool software. Now, we use a purchase and sale contract, and we've provided a purchase and sale contract for you in your resources and download form section of your members panel. But when making offers, say through REOs or through real estate agents, we recommend using what's called your state certified contract that you can get from any realtor. Once more, an assignment example is you find a cash buyer for $80,000 for that property that's $70,000. You use that assignment contract to assign all of your interest in that property over to your buyer. Once that assignment contract is signed by your buyer, you no longer have any rights to that contract. You have sold that contract to your cash buyer for a fee. You take that contract and you send it to your closing agent or your closing attorney and wait for any questions that they have. Do not let that next process confuse you or get you demotivated. It does to too many people. Once again, just concentrate on getting a contract from a motivated seller, getting a contract from a cash buyer, and getting that assignment contract sent over. When you have questions, we're here to help and answer those for you. But just concentrate on those 3 steps. The rest will just happen. Once it's done, you literally pick up your check or have it wired. Now, having it wired is a lot of fun because, as I showed you earlier, there's nothing more exciting than seeing opening up your inbox and seeing you just received a wire of X from your bank. You gotta love it. Now remember, you're in the marketing and relationship business. That is what this is all about. The properties and the contracts are just the product. You are all about relationships. I'm telling you right now, without relationships, you're going to make this business very, very difficult. Now, these relationships need to be great on both ends. You need to have great phenomenal relationships with your buyers. And when dealing with motivated sellers, it's all about building rapport so that you can get that contract in the first place. Talk to them, ask them many, many questions. Spend as much time with the seller as you can. Be friends with the seller. Make them want to sell their property to you. Make them feel comfortable. Once again, reading a few books and How to Win Friends and Influence People, although it has absolutely zero to do with real estate in particular, it has everything to do with real estate. Get a motivated seller to trust and like you, you will get that contract. You will see much more success than the guy next to you implementing the very same investment strategies, but if you're the one with the relationship, let's say expertise, you will be the one getting the property, regardless of your credibility or background or past experiences. Now that you know what traditional wholesaling is all about, let's talk about co-wholesaling. Now, what is co-wholesaling? Co-wholesaling simplifies it so that you only have to implement one side of this transaction. Now, this is where the business gets really sexy for us, and this is what the 10-hour wholesaler is going to be all about. So strategy 1, you contract the property and another investor brings the buyer to the table. Strategy number 2, an investor has a property under contract and you bring in the buyer, which is what we are all about, the marketing agreement. So in a transaction like this, when a fellow wholesaler has gone out and done all of the work and gotten the property under contract from a motivated seller, and you happen to have a cash buyer, because we focus as 10-hour wholesalers, we focus on cash buyers, which we're going to dig into later on in the core modules, number 2. But in this type of relationship, when you bring your cash buyer to buy a fellow wholesaler's property, you're going to need to have what's called a marketing agreement. Now, we provided a marketing agreement for you. You can also go one step further and get what's called a non-circumvent contract. And we can get into that a little bit later as well. But a non-circumvent will be where your wholesaler is in essence just promising that he will not go around you and steal your buyer from you, which is a question that we get all of the time. But remember, co-wholesaling, the 10-hour wholesaler way, is going to be all about an abundance mentality. Now, when doing this, the typical profit spread is a 50-50 split. So, if the selling wholesaler has the property under contract for $50,000 and your buyer has agreed to buy that property for $60,000, that's a $10,000 spread, and that is $5,000 to each of you, a 50-50 profit split. Now, let me introduce smart wholesaling for the new rich. Now, this is wholesaling properties without marketing for motivated sellers. It's without spending thousands on mail campaigns. It's without negotiating with sellers. It's without putting escrow deposit money down. And it's without driving through neighborhoods. And especially without putting up bandit signs at 2 a.m. For any of you experienced wholesalers out there, you know exactly what I'm talking about. It's also without ever having to own a property. Ever without worrying about the most difficult thing in this business, which is finding deals. Doing it this way, you will never have to worry about that again. And that is a beautiful thing. You need to get excited about that. You're also doing this without working your ass off and having tons of stress. Now, smart wholesaling for the new rich, here is what you need to know. We work for our buyers, and our buyers love us for it. We leverage OPI, which is other people's inventory. Very important. See, we are dumbing it down the smart wholesaling way. We don't spend a dime marketing for properties. We make consistent money, outsource, and live the lifestyle that most people got into real estate for in the first place. It's minimum work for maximum effect. So, we locate our cash buyers first. We find out exactly what their perfect investment property looks like. We literally ask them that question, and your cash buyer questionnaire is provided for you in the download and resource section. We need to know what it looks like, the location, year build, the construction type, the amount of repairs needed, and everything. Get them to envision what the perfect property is for them. The very house that they would buy over and over and over again. That means the exact neighborhood, then maybe even the exact same street, what it looks like, it smells like, how big it is, the condition that it's in, the amount of repairs that it needs. And what we're doing by getting them that detailed is letting them know that you are out looking for that perfect property for them. By asking them these questions, you're going a step further than anybody else ever has for them. We want them to envision just the absolute ideal property. Have them so detailed that they are actually getting excited about doing it. Let them know that you are the best and that you will find this property for them. Remember, you are working for these guys. The way of this new rich, smart wholesaler is to work for the buyer. You then go shop for your buyer and look for the property for them. You'll find exactly what they're wanting and using for their own resources. Then make them commit. Ask them straight up. Do not go around this. Very important. Once you've brought them through this process, they've talked about their perfect property, say, listen, so I'm going to use my own resources, my time, and my efforts to find you this property. If and when I get you this property, will you commit and purchase this property within 7 days? Get them to say the word yes. Then just go to work and shop for your buyers. Once again, smart wholesaling for the new rich. Your buyers are the meat, and we're going to talk the potatoes later. But be friends with them. You are their alliance. You're here to help them reach their financial goals in real estate. They are lucky for you to come into their life. And now they can focus on what they do in life and depend on you to find their inventory. You're helping them reach their real estate goals. Even though smart wholesaling focuses on finding buyers first and then leveraging OPI, which is other people's inventory, let's still go over my top motivated sources, my top sources for finding motivated sellers, that is. Now, my top sources for motivated sellers are the 3 Ds, and that is death, disaster, and divorce. Sounds like a doom and gloom horror movie, and it could be. But listen, this is life. These 3 things happen all day, every day, 24 hours a day. And these are people where circumstances have put them in a situation where they need help. This can happen to anybody. And in these situations, you are actually going to be in a position to help these people. Okay, let's talk the first D, death. Now, probate, which is also inheritance. This is a phenomenal source of leads. It's one of the best sources out there. And how to get the list. You're going to need to go to, this is one of many, but you can go to www.usleadlists.com. You can speak to Lance. Lance and Terry both own usleadlist.com. They can provide you with one of the best probate inheritance lists that are out there. It's very, very detailed, very, very good. Now, let them know when you call them that you're looking for the probate list in X. So, if your target market is going to be, let's say, Phoenix, you're going to call them up or email them and ask for the probate list in Phoenix. Now, they only sell the list to 2 people at a time, and the list only gets released every quarter. check with them and see what's available. Now, US Lead List is not the only probate inheritance list provider. You can also do a Google search for probate real estate lead list. Now, the second D, disaster. Storms, earthquakes, natural disasters. Let me tell you, Hurricane Sandy was a devastation. It was horrible. But on the other end, it created lots of opportunities for people. And there are a lot of investors doing lots of renovations, wholesales, fix and flips throughout the entire northeastern region due to Hurricane Sandy. So a lot of opportunities opened up. These opportunities happen because when properties get damaged so badly, the current property owners cannot handle or do not want to handle both physically and or emotionally dealing with that property. So they'll either walk away from the property, or in some cases it just works out with the insurance adjustment where you can buy that property cash at a very deep discount. Here's the thing. Some people call this praying, and that is not the case at all. The disaster happened, and without people like you and other investors willing to buy a dilapidated property for cash, the government could possibly be forced to mow these properties down, therefore putting more stress on insurance companies, which ends up putting more stress on the actual government. So by the private sector coming in and purchasing these properties, you're doing a huge service. This happens in your local area also all the time. It's called firehouses. Now, to get houses that have recently caught on fire, you call your local fire department and ask for the list. Get the list of the recent firehouses. It's public information, and nearly every single Sydney municipality has it. Now, on to the third D, disaster. Disaster could be something as simple as a water damaged property, say a water heater broke on a second story floor, and nobody noticed it for a week. The entire house floods out, creates mold. Next thing you know, you have thousands and thousands, sometimes hundreds of $1,000s worth of repairs on these properties. This creates an issue, but also an opportunity for an investor. These are people that you're going to want to reach out to. For water damaged properties, a little ninja trick is to just Google private mold remediation water damage, disaster relief contractors and companies in your target market. So it would look something like mold remediation, Phoenix, Arizona. When you Google that, look at the results and contact those companies. Ask them, hey, have you had any properties that have serious issues? If so, I would just like to let you know that I'm a local investor. We buy properties cash, and for any property that we ever buy from a lead that you provide us, we can provide a referral fee. And many times that can be $500, $1,000, $2,000, whatever the case may be. This happens more often than you would think. It's a very great way to build a network. Divorce. Now, the best way to deal with divorces is to call divorce attorneys throughout your entire region. You can do this by doing a Google search and then just reach out to them and let them know that you buy properties cash and would like to establish a mutually beneficial relationship with them. Properties are referred to you from the attorney's divorce cases when sellers need to sell. You'll be the professional real estate expert. So, in exchange for them sending you leads, offer your services to them as a professional real estate expert. If they ever need a testimonial or a case as a real estate expert to come in and help them, then offer your time to do that for them. Trust me, this will make them extremely grateful and happy, and a lot of times it is the offer that pushes them over the hump. If they're not interested, then they're just not interested. Let them know you'll be more than happy to assist them in any way you can, and that you pay referral fees for any property you end up buying. Now, you are going to want to speak with them and see if this is something that they're okay with. And again, every state is different. Attorneys like to be able to offer this service to their clients. Absentee owners. Now, this is my number one source of deals. These deals are nationwide, and it's just an absolutely phenomenal source. Now, absentee owners are people who own a property but don't necessarily live in it. Again, an example would be a property that looks distressed in Orlando and the owner lives in Phoenix, Arizona. That's an absentee owner. Another indication of absentee owner is just simply looking up the mailing address and then the property address. These properties can become a burden, and I know many people who have concentrated on just working with absentee owners. We ourselves, a few years ago, did a campaign focusing on just absentee owners, and we did over 20 wholesale deals in just 3 months, sending out yellow letter campaigns to absentee owners. Absentee owners is a nationwide source of deals. People who own a property but don't live in it. That's what an absentee owner is. Now, they have different mailing addresses than the actual subject property does. These properties can become a burden. Out of area state management is very difficult. A lot of times there's tenant issues, maintenance issues, and the best way to get this is from usleadlist.com. They also provide an absentee owner list. Now, you going through a list provider is one of the easiest ways to get a list of absentee owners. They simply do all the work for you, then you get the list, and you send out your direct mail campaign to them. And we're going to go into the exact direct mail campaign that you need to be using a little later, which is called the yellow letter mail campaign. Now, there's another way to do it that's cheaper, because yes, the list does cost money. If you want to do this absolutely free, but time consuming, you can do what's called driving for dollars. And if your subject property is where you live, then you simply do this. Drive up and down the streets of a very desirable investor friendly neighborhood where you know investors are currently doing fix and flips, and or a neighborhood where there is lots and lots of rentals, because you know there are obviously lots and lots of landlords in that area. So what you do is drive up and down those streets with a notepad and a pen, and you look at any dilapidated property that looks completely abandoned with not a soul in sight. Some indications of an absentee owner property that would be an effective lead would be a property that is obviously vacant, and the way to tell is by stacked up newspapers in the front door, grass that's growing over knee high, boarded up windows, spray paint. These types of indications can be strong indicators of whether or not you have a potential absentee owner situation. So what you do is you mark that property address down. After you're done driving the neighborhoods throughout the day, you go into public records and you Google your local county's property appraiser's website. So if you were in Orlando, Florida, you're going to Google Orange County, which is the county for Orlando, Orange County public property appraiser site. So do the same for whatever your subject market is. Use that website to type in each address that you have written down. If the property owner is located out of state or somewhere else, you have right there in front of you what's called an absentee owner lead. This could potentially be a great source because it is very niched and you know that the property is in need of help. Now, you can outsource a lot of this. You can hire somebody to drive up and down the streets for you for a very cheap amount of money, believe it or not. And then you can outsource the looking up of these properties to a virtual assistant on some of the sources that we'll go over to later on for very, very cheap. Very, very cheap to other overseas virtual assistants in the Philippines. Or you can take it upon yourself to do it yourself, but I highly do not recommend it, and we're going to go into more of that why a little later. But that is generally how you can do absentee owners. It's a great source for motivated sellers. So let's just overview that one more time of what absentee owners looks like. So the free source is, once again, locating absentee owners by searching through your county public records. You just do a Google search for your state, county, property appraiser office. Most counties' website and functionality vary, but many have an option where you can pull a list of owners where their primary and mailing address is different than the subject property's address. Alright, contacting sellers directly. So with these lists and using those sources of list of motivated sellers, we just identified where you want to get motivated sellers from. Now, how are you going to contact them? Well, here is how you do it. This is the most effective way in the industry. Now, it's a bit controversial in the fact that it seems is the key word, to be so personable that you will get a lot of, let's call them, inquiries from concerned people. But the goal is to get the phone ringing when you're trying to do your own wholesale deals and working with motivated sellers. You're going to send them what's called the yellow letter mail campaign. Now right here in front of you, you see an example of a yellow letter. And it simply says this: Dear Ann, my name is Justin from PalmCoastHomebuyers.com, and I'm very interested in buying your home at 123 Elm Street. Please call me at, or see me at my website. Please call. Thank you, Justin. Now, this is a yellow letter on yellow paper, obviously, and it looks handwritten in red ink. There are a few ways to go about doing this. Once again, to stay low budget, you can do it all on your own. And you simply write out this mail template on a yellow piece of paper with red ink, and you write "Dear," leave it blank, and then write the rest of the message. You then bring this to somewhere like Staples, and you can make a bunch of identical copies. Or you can take a bunch of yellow paper, upload it into your inkjet printer, and make your own. You can then handwrite the name of the subject person. You can then take the envelopes, and this is very critical, very important. When you send these out in an invitation style envelope, typically a manila envelope. Invitation style looks like your typical invitational card. You then put what's called a live stamp on it, which means it's just a regular stamp that you get from the post office. That envelope is then addressed, handwritten in red ink. Now once again, this seems to be very time consuming, much more time consuming than, say, just ordering a batch of postcards. But let me tell you, the response rate by doing this is 15 to 20%. That is non-existent in the direct mail campaign industry. Something to compare it to is a postcard. Your typical postcard gets a 1% to, at best, a 3% response rate. So, you can see the difference. Time versus money. You don't have to do as many yellow letters to achieve the same results that you would have to do with a postcard. Option number 2 for these yellow letters is, once again, contacting US Lead List and asking them to do the yellow letter campaign for you. Now, they can actually pull your list of, say, absentee owners for a fee, of course. Then they can actually do these yellow letters for you and send them out for you. This is the smartest way to go about it when doing outsourcing. But if budgeting is an issue, you can go about it doing it yourself in the beginning, and after your first deal, you can dedicate 15%. And make sure you do this, but dedicate 15% to immediately putting out another yellow letter campaign. Now, I do want to reiterate, this is all, we're teaching you how to wholesale your own properties. But the smart wholesaler way and the 10-hour wholesaler method, which we're going to get into in module 2, is going to be different. You will get to bypass this, But you do need to know how to wholesale properties before you go into co-wholesaling. So consider this your formal education. All right, other sources of motivated sellers: REOs, foreclosures, and HUDs. Now, these can be good sources, and I have done many REOs, HUDs, and foreclosures. But I will tell you right now that in this current real estate market, in most of the good markets across the country, a lot of these are starting to dry up, but there's still opportunity. And let me show you how there's still opportunity in REOs, foreclosures, and HUDs. Get a list of bank-owned homes that can be obtained from a local REO agent and broker. If you don't already have a relationship with one of these guys, you're going to need to try to get in with them. They already have relationships with other cash investors, but in many cases, there are newer ones to the market, and there are also guys that are always looking to expand their investor reach. So one of the best ways to get a hold of these guys is to go to your local real estate investors association, which is a must anyway, and find out who they are using. What REO broker is the biggest and baddest in your county? That's the guy that you want to talk to. Make sure that you at least reach out to them, talk to them, and let them know that you're part of the organization. Target properties on the market for 90 plus days. Now this is very important. The REOs that hit the market on day one in many cases are not listed well below market value anymore. There are many reasons that go into this, but just trust me, you will find better deals and less competition and less bidding wars by asking for a list of properties, to be more specific, a list of foreclosure properties that have been on the market for 90 days or more. Now, let them know you're a serious cash buyer and would like to go direct through them as their buyer client, and you would greatly appreciate them putting you on their auto update list for properties that fit your buyer's criteria. So you're going to give them what your buyers are looking for, as well as whatever it is in your market that cash buyers and investors are buying. So you're going to want to do both, what your buyers are looking and what you also know that in general what all cash buyers are buying. You will need a proof of funds, which is called a POF, when dealing with bank-owned properties. To get one of these, go to shortfunding.com/request funding. You can also go to transactionalfunding.com/order proof of funds. Now, what these guys do are provide short-term funding for investors. Now, you will need to have your buyer set up in place and under contract. You will also need to make sure that you have your buyer's EMD. Now, when you have your property under contract with a seller and you have a buyer willing to pay more for that property, to get the financing in between is not difficult at all. So you will need to make a relationship with one of these companies. Shortfunding.com is a phenomenal resource. Make offers at least 12% below the list price, so you are providing value to your buyer. Now, 12% below list price is a high number. And when making offers on REOs and foreclosures on the 90 days or greater list, make sure your offers are at least 12% below the list price. Now, you're only going to make it at 12% below the list price if the list price seems to be below after repair value, or not seems to be, if it is. But even if you make an offer at 12% below list and it gets accepted, but it doesn't seem to be at a number that you need to be at, that's okay. Start to do the deal, and here's why. In almost all foreclosures, there's a 7 to 10 day inspection period. During that inspection period, you have the opportunity to obviously inspect. From there, you'll find something that's wrong with the property. Use that, take pictures of it, and get a quote from a contractor on what it would take to repair that particular repair. I don't care what it is, but make sure you find that repair. When you do, send in the estimate and discount your offer that much. Now, when you do this, the only advantage or the only reason that contractor would want to do this for you is because he plans on doing the work afterwards. Do everything you possibly can to make sure that he does get the job when you sell the property. A lot of times this is possible because you already have relationships with the buyers that you're selling the properties to. Therefore, you can recommend this contractor. If that's not possible, let the contractor know that upon successful closing, that you will give them some sort of fee for coming out and doing the estimate. Now, it's all going to depend on the deal, but that's a great method to go about getting a property under contract. It's much more effective. Listen, it's much more effective than going out and making offers on foreclosures at 50% below what their ask price is. These days, it's just not that realistic. Befriend the top REO agents and brokers. Do everything you can. Take them out to lunch. It might be the best $25 that you'll ever spend in your life. Me, personally, that's exactly what I did, and it's how I got my first HUD property. I took out the #1 HUD broker to lunch, and from there, I consequently did my first deal, netting me almost $10,000, and after that, we did dozens and dozens of properties after that. If you can't bring them out to lunch, bring them out to a cup of coffee or a beer. That's fine too, but bring them out and pick their brain. Show them that you are here for the long haul and that you want to build that relationship. Take it seriously. Now, again, I spoke about this earlier, but foreclosures are a numbers game. Contracts are not assignable. So let's go back to the numbers game. So when dealing with foreclosures, you need to be making at a minimum 5 offers a week. But that's really a bare minimum. You should be making at least 50 offers a week if you are in a county with over 200,000 more residences. If you're in a county or a city with under 200,000 people, then it's relative. Maybe 5 offers will be able. Contracts, when you're dealing with foreclosures, are not assignable. So remember, we spoke about assigning contracts earlier. You cannot assign your contract when you're dealing with a foreclosure. You're going to have to do a simultaneous closing, which is perfectly fine, but you just need to know that. Now, the offer blast approach, making 25 plus offers a week. Actually, you can do 25 plus a day. So you can do this on complete automation, and your admin can blast off offers via email. Now, one of the best sources for doing this is a software called FreedomSoft and a little thing that they have called OfferBot. In order to get a free trial for FreedomSoft, go to privatemoneyblueprint.com/try-it-free. This is a phenomenal resource. If you're going to take this business serious, get this. It will completely change your business if and when you use it. We have done many deals by blasting out offers across the board. Now, you'll find out exactly how to do this when you get into the system. It'll show you step by step how to make this happen. But it's all about making offers in mass quantities. That is the most important step when dealing with REOs. And you can go about it both ways, but I recommend doing the 12% below list price approach first. If that doesn't work, go ahead and follow up with where you need to be, which is a 60 to 50% at after repair value. Now, once again, once you get into the system, you'll see the options that are in the system where you can literally choose at what percent you want to make the offer of list price. So, for example, if a list price is $100,000, it will allow you to send out your offer at 50 or 60 or 70% of list price, which means it'll automatically generate your contract at $70,000. Very, very cool. And this is what, once again, this is all about. It's all about leverage. You must leverage at all. Now, when making offers, you do need to know your values. 65 to 75% of the after repair value minus repairs is your typical way of making an offer if you're not going to do the 12% method. So once again, if it's a $100,000 house, your offer needs to be anywhere between 60 to 75% of the after repair value. Now, if the property needs an estimated $10,000 repairs, you're going to need to back out that $10,000. So what would that look like? That will look like if you have a house that's worth $100,000 all fixed up, you'll know it's worth $100,000 because you can use one of the sources above: Zillow, RealQuest, FreedomSoft, eAppraisal.com, and MLS Comps to determine the value. So, back to our example, you have a house that's worth $100,000 after repair. Your offer needs to be 70%. Now, that will be $70,000. If you determine that that property needs an average of $10,000 in repairs, then your offer needs to be $60,000. In general, a 3-bedroom, 2-bath house that has about 1,700 square feet, this is a very general number, but a 3-2 with 1,700 square feet, block construction with absolutely no real structural problems at all, including furnaces and hot water heaters and air conditioning. If it just needs paint, carpet, cosmetics, and minor repairs, $10,000 in repairs is a good general number. Now, there's a lot of softwares out there that you can use, like rehab evaluators, that will tell you and generate an estimated repair cost for you. You can definitely use these. But just make sure that you are backing out your estimated general repairs for making offers. You need to do this because this is the only way that you're creating value for your cash buyer to sell this property to. Okay, so that's how to find your own deals to flip to your own buyers. And I'm not against it at all. As a matter of fact, we do it all the time. But smart wholesaling focuses on leveraging OPI, other people's inventory, so that you completely bypass everything that we just talked about in regards to motivated sellers. But once again, you did and do need to know everything we just talked about, because you should know how to wholesale your own properties and make it part of your business, but it should not be your focus. Now, OPI, other people's inventory, one of the best acronyms that exists because it completely changed my life. So the other wholesalers you want to JV with do all of the marketing for you, all of the seller negotiations for you, all of the deal analyzing, getting appraisals and contractor quotes and more, all for you. In Module 2, the 10-hour wholesaler way, after you learn how to find your first target market, we'll go over multiple strategies for tapping into OPI. Now, my top buyer sources: landlords, retail buyers, rehab, fix and flip buyers. And then at the bottom of the list are hedge funds. So let's talk about landlord buyers real quick. Focus on these leads with the laser beam because landlord buyers are phenomenal. These relationships with these buyers are your main focus. In this business, you should be eating, sleeping, and breathing, thinking nonstop buyer leads. When you're building these systems, you are all about the buyers. That is who you're going to work for. That's who you represent. And landlord buyers, top 2 sources of buyers. You need to focus on these guys with a laser beam. Typically, these buyers are repeat clients and they can afford to pay more than the fix and flip investors. The reason being is the fix and flip guys, they need a margin, of course, in order to create a profit. Your landlords are just looking for a good ROI, which is return on investment. In many cases in this market, since landlords are just looking to get property on their inventory. All right, retail cash buyers. Some of the best buyers you have on your list. Retail prices using huge cash. There are lots and lots and lots of them. Retail cash buyers are hitting the market daily. Now, here's what's beautiful about targeting what I'm calling retail cash buyers. Nobody targets these leads. All the other wholesalers and investors are fighting for investor buyers, fix and flip buyers, and of course also your landlord buyers. But these retail, quote unquote, retail cash buyers are insanely profitable buyers to work with. And let's get more into these. They are simply a standard buyer looking for a good deal in today's market. Cash comes from a variety of sources. Now, they might be getting their cash from self-directed 401ks. They might be getting it from their IRAs. They might be getting it from their pensions. They're getting it from settlements. They're getting it from savings. And lots of investment accounts where buyers just want to take a chunk out of their volatile stock markets and put it into real estate and what many now believe is the bottom of the market. Fix and flip short-term investor buyers, aka rehabbers. See, rehabbers are a great source of cash buyers, but they need more equity per deal. They can also be great repeat clients, and they are. And tougher to get deals for these days, especially when dealing with foreclosures, REOs, and HUDs. But when sending out mail campaigns and dealing with motivated sellers, you're going to find some extremely dilapidated, extremely in need of repaired homes that you're going to get for well below current market value. This is when your fix and flip short-term investor buyer is going to really fall into play, and they will be willing to take on that project. Work the extra work, as they can be very loyal and large amounts of business can be done with them. Now, hedge fund buyers. These also can be a great source of buyers, but they typically do not like to do a large amount of repairs. Only need one local representative. So, hedge funds typically hire representatives and subject markets to represent them. You only need to build a relationship with that one guy. They work entirely on a relationship basis. Now, this will depend if it's a private fund or a large corporate fund. You'll most likely be working with just a rep or a subcontractor of the fund, not direct to buyer. But once again, if it's a private fund, you may actually be speaking directly to the buyer. They pay some of the highest prices out of all the buyer categories, especially the corporate funds. But they're very, very specific as to the location and condition. But that's okay. Remember, get everything that they're possibly looking for, their ideal property. And your job will be to go out and find that particular property for them at that price. It's not any more difficult or complicated than that. So, when doing all this, I highly recommend that you do all of this deal structuring through setting up your company entity. Now, you do not have to do this before you wholesale a deal. It's not 100% needed to have in order to get started. Now, this is not legal advice. I'm just telling you, from my opinion, what you need to know. But you really should set up your company entity, and it is not very difficult, and it does not cost much money whatsoever. LLCs only cost around $150, and you can do a Google search to find out where you can do this in your local county. Some of the resources are LegalZoom.com and corporatecreations.com, which are people that we've used before. So here's your action list, and guys, remember, you have to take action. Join your local RIA group. Do this immediately. Do a Google search if you're not already a part of this group and join them. Things will snowball once you join this group. Read How to Win Friends and Influence People. I recommend reading it once a month. Personally, I've read it 5 times. Decide if you're going to focus solely on smart wholesaling or add it as an additional profit strategy to your current business model. Download all Module 1 resources. Schedule study time for Module 2. Remember, use your block scheduling. Got any questions? Let us know. We are here for you. And I'd like to end this with a very, very timely quote, and this really recaps everything that we just spoke about, because this was an introduction to wholesaling houses, and as an introduction means that this might be a new venture for you. If it is, check this out. William G.T. Shedd says, "A ship is safe in harbor, but that's not what ships are made for." Well, listen, if you're not breaching out, if you're not growing, and if you're playing it safe, you're not doing what you are here for. You're not doing what you were intended for. I say this all the time because it's so true, but people are counting on you, and you need to take action. So just listening to this is not going to do the trick. You're going to need to listen to it, pause it, and take action. Make it happen.